Hey everyone, it's Jack, and today I'm going to take a look at Mageia 9 Alpha. So Mageia 9 has not been actually released. It's not considered a prime time distro yet because it's still in alpha being tested. However, that's what's fun, is getting to see what's new. And what is Mageia anyways? Well, Mageia was originally way back in the day, probably 20 years ago or so, give or take, used to be Mandrake Linux, and then it went extinct. Well, actually, then teamed up with I think it was a Brazilian company called Riva or something like that. I can't remember, my memory's a little fuzzy, but anyways, the project turned into, went from Mandrake to Mandriva. And so then you had Mandriva, or Open Mandriva, actually. And then that went out of business and became Open Mandriva. But there was some differences with the main engineering team, and so some of them didn't want the distro to go in the direction that it was going. So they kind of separated and they said, fork this. And that's exactly what they did. They created a fork, which is Mageia. So now we have Mageia and Open Mandriva. This would be the forked version. And I hope I got all that right, if memory serves me correctly. So it's something like that. I might take a little bit of it with a grain of salt, but that's kind of the gist of it anyways. So here you can see that Mageia 8 is the current version, which was released in February of 2021. And Mageia 9 is supposed to be released this year sometime, I think. I don't know the exact date off the top of my head, but it debuted on November 19th, 2022. So the alpha releases have been out, and this is mainly for testers. But if I know a lot of my RPM distros pretty well, I bet it's fairly stable even at this point as an alpha. So I can't wait to jump in here and test it. If you look down here towards the bottom of the website here, you see Test Mageia 9. So I'm just going to hit that Mageia 9 there, and it takes us to a download page here where we can download our Mageia 9 Alpha 1. And so here we got our links here, and you can go either with an image that has the classic install on it, where you would install it straight from the prompt, or you can have the live media here, which is what I prefer. I kind of like to see the live environment, have that option at least. And then there's a network install if you want to do it completely online, but I'm going to go with live media. And then it opens up and gives us some more choices here. Plasma, GNOME, and XFCE. Wow, that's a tough one. Well, I just did XFCE, and GNOME is kind of heavy, so why don't we try Plasma and see how that goes? So I'm going to hit that, and supported architecture, 64-bit. And then we get another layer here, download method. So let's try the direct link here. And so here we got some choices and some other links, and it's giving us a download. So I'm going to let it do its thing here. And then when it's done downloading, I'll be right back. Okay, here we are at our boot screen. So here we got Boot Mageia Live for our default. So I think that's good. I'm going to let it do its thing, and let's just see how this is looking. So we're coming into our default environment, and looking good so far. Nice splash screen. Mageia is an RPM distro, in case I forgot to mention it. That's opposed to like an Arch distro or a Debian-based distro, like Ubuntu or Debian, of course. So RPM distros, commonly most people will think of Fedora and OpenSUSE and so forth, and Mageia is another one. And this is really actually a pretty cool distro. I remember looking at this back when Mageia 8 was out, I believe. So I'm going to go with our language here. It's prompting, and English American sounds good to me. So I'll just hit next there. And then our license, which I'll just accept blindly. And New York works for a time zone, so I'm going to go with that. And then our hardware clock, I would say UTC is the most accurate there. And then our US keyboard is good. So we'll let it do all that stuff, and then it should boot into a live environment. So here's our KDE stuff. It's coming in, looking good so far. And this will take a second probably to get all the stuff loaded in, all the live info. And then we should be seeing a desktop any second now. And there it is. Yay. And I think I'm going to shrink while I'm at it. There, that's better. Nice and shrunk and tucked down into the right corner. So here we have our Mageia welcome screen, which looks pretty nice. And so we got our welcome, live mode, MCC install software install, and more information. So let me just pop over here and install this guy and see what we get. So if we go here, you can see we can permanently install our stuff. So I'm going to hit launch installation here. And then this wizard will help us do the live install. So I'm just going to hit next. And I'm just going to go with the defaults here, use existing partitions, but you can also customize your partition and erase and use the entire disk, which is actually probably what I would do, but I think use existing partitions is going to kind of do the same thing. So I'm just going to try that first. So we have 65 gigs allocated to this. And then I'm just going to let it do everything automatically and see what happens. Just kind of wipe the whole drive, everything. So if you try this and you got something really precious on there that you don't have backed up, I probably wouldn't do it until you back it up anyway. So anyways, shows that we have detected some packages that are not needed for your system config. We will also remove the following packages unless you choose otherwise. Unused hardware support and unused localization. And then when I click on the advanced here, it kind of gives us a list here of the stuff that we're not really using. And it's got a bunch of locales in here from other locations that are not relevant. And then other things like VirtualBox and so forth. So I'm good with that. I'm just going to hit OK and just go next. And now it's going to remove the packages. If I didn't want to remove it, I guess I could have just hit skip and it would have skipped it. But why have a bunch of stuff you don't need? So that nice feature there. I like that. So we're going to let it remove its packages and then it should take us on to the next step. All right. So now it looks like it's already installing. Wow. Didn't see that coming. Okay, so it's going to do its install there. And so at this point, I'm making an assumption that after the install is finished, we're going to reboot, and then it's going to have me create the username and so forth like that. So this is probably one of those two-part installs where it finishes at the reboot. So I'm going to let it do its thing, and then when it's done, I'll be back. And I'm back. So yes, I guess there is more stuff to do. It was kind of installing here for a few minutes, and now we've gotten some more prompts here. So we got our bootloader, and so I'm going to stay with all the defaults here on our boot device and so forth, and our main options. For security, I'm going to put in a password here, just any old thing here. And let's see what's under advanced just for the heck of it. And all this stuff, enable ACPI, SMP, APIC, and so forth. When you don't know what it is, the best thing to do is just not mess with it. So I'm just going to say okay with it and just leave it at its defaults. Rarely do you ever have to really go into the advanced anyways, unless you're advanced enough to know what those things do. So we'll just go next because none of that really is relevant for this. And now it's installing the grub, which I think means that it's going to be ready to reboot. And then I think the install is probably going to finish on reboot, but maybe not. So here we got our Mageia for our default splash, and in our menu for our default option here. And then again under advanced, if we look, we can adjust this, like change our video mode, By default, it's 800 by 600, but if you wanted that like full screen right at the boot screen, you could actually, looks like you could set it right here. So just for fun, let's try it. Nothing that's 1900 though, so let's just do something closer, like 1280 by 1024, just for fun. And let's make it 16-bit. Let's make it a 16 BPP, and then come back. And I hope I don't regret that, but I think it should look kind of cool. It'll just kind of make your boot splash there a little bit bigger there at the initial, your boot menu, at your initial boot up. So we're going to let it install the boot loader. And now it's given us an opportunity to set up some online media, like security updates. And since we have a working internet connection, I'm going to say yes. Let's see what's there. So let's go next. And so now it's downloading some stuff. I'm thinking maybe it's a metadata, a list of things that are available, or maybe it's just going to automatically grab stuff that it deems that we should have. So this might be actually related more to security updates than anything, which is always a good thing. So I'm going to let it kind of do its thing here, and we'll see what happens. All right, that didn't take long. So now that we got that done, now it's giving us the option to update packages. So let's see what that's all about. I'm going to stick with yes and just hit next. And so now it's looking for packages. These are some of the updated things that were mentioned on the website, like the glibc and so forth. Python 3. Nice. Okay. So yeah, I'm good with that. I'm going to hit OK and let it upgrade those packages. And this is going pretty fast too, getting our glibc, our Python, and so forth. Glibc is very new there, 2.36, so that's pretty cool. And it's also mentioning that we should restart the machine for glibc, but we got to restart it anyway to boot. So I'll just hit OK. Good with that. So now let's see if it's going to prompt us any further here, or if that was it. I'm just going to slide this window over, and looks like there's something behind it. So we're getting like a little status here, distribution upgrade. So I think right now it's just kind of maybe upgrading. I'm not sure, but we're kind of getting a pause here, and I'm not sure if it's still installing or if it's done. So I'm just going to give it a few minutes just in case it's not done. So I'm going to wait 5 minutes, I think, just for the heck of it. I'm going to pause the video and I'll let you know what happened. Okay, I'm back. That wasn't long, about 30 seconds. And I got another message here on the distribution upgrade. It says some requested packages cannot be installed, like Pipewire Pulse Audio, due to conflicts with another version of Pulse Audio. And so, do you want to continue the install anyway? Well, heck yeah, I can worry about that later. It'll probably iron itself out on a future update anyway. So, showing us a dependency list, I'm just going to say okay. And then we'll let it do its distro upgrade again. Okay, and now it's downloading stuff. The distro upgrade screen there was blank for quite a while, about a minute, but if that happens to you, don't feel like that it's frozen up. It's just kind of queuing up the stuff and downloading things there. So when it's communicating, there's not really any feedback, at least not at this time. So that's okay. It looks like that's just normal. And then you start getting activity that will appear here in the dialog window. So it's all looking good. It's kind of doing its stuff. And so this shouldn't take much longer. And then we'll go from there. Okay, and now that's complete. We got our distribution upgrade. That actually took a while. 22 minutes roughly, to be exact. Roughly exact. And so, anyways, since it took so long, I decided to go off and get some lunch. And now I'm back. But I did kind of time it there just to kind of get an idea of how long it actually took. And so this is something you can opt not to do until later after the install, actually, but this kind of gets it out of the way during the install. So it was kind of a good experience. It says the same thing as last time. You should restart your computer, except for this time, glibc, kernel desktop, and systemd. Well, okay then. So I'll just hit OK. And now we got our message there saying we can halt our computer, remove the live system, and restart it. So I'm going to do that. So let's hit finish. And then I'll click restart here. And then after that, I'll remove my installations media and we'll see what happens. Hopefully this all worked. See you in a second. Okay, and now we're rebooting and hopefully everything went okay. So now I think it's going to kind of continue our setup here during the reboot if everything went okay. And we're about to find out. So far it's looking good. Got a splash screen and it is kind of going through the process. Here's our, and there we go. So now it's prompting to set an administrator password. So I'll just go ahead and type one in there. And then type it again. And then we can enter in our user here. So I'm just going to do my usual here. So we'll just go with Toadwick. And then the login name is automatically generated in lowercase. And then we'll do a password again. And then there's an advanced thing there. So if you want to go in here and do some fancy advanced stuff like allow SU, that'll kind of give you, I like to hit wheel there. So I'm going to go with that, I think. RPM tools, that looks good. Why not just give them all? Why not? Give myself access. Because it's myself. I can trust me, right? So I'll just hit next. And let's go in and see what happens. Yay, here we are. So we got our boot screen here. And for our session by default, we're at X11. And there's also an IceWM. So it looks like that's kind of the window manager. IceWM is also an option that's in there as well. So that's kind of cool. I'm going to put in my username that we just generated, Toadwick, and password, and let's log in. So it looks like that, at least at this point, Mageia 9 is not ready for Wayland yet. However, we do got our X11, and so let's see what's going on. And apparently I must have misspelled my password, so I'll try it again. There we go. That's better, I think. I guess we'll find out. So now, looks like we're getting some more activity here. So I think I just misspelled my password there the first time. For a second there, I was thinking that maybe I got myself caught in one of those infinite login things. But so far, so good. It's kind of putting things together here. And there's our welcome screen. That's looking good. No background yet, though. I'm not sure if the desktop's populating or if something didn't come out right. But I'm going to give it here a minute and see what happens. And it's been about a minute, so not that long. But I'm wondering if maybe it's supposed to be black until you go through these first steps. I don't know. So I'm just going to click on a couple of these tabs and just kind of see what happens here. So here we can configure our software repositories. And then it goes on to tell you what the repos contain. So your core repo has the free and open source packages. Then you got your non-free, which has closed source programs like your NVIDIA proprietary drivers. If you're an NVIDIA user, non-free driver for some Wi-Fi cards and so forth. So those are all good to have. I kind of have like those. Then we have a tainted, which means these packages like audio, video codecs and so forth for multimedia files or even commercial DVDs could infringe on patents or copyright laws in certain countries. So that's something I like to have too, because I want to have my multimedia codecs. And then we got backports, which includes new versions of packages, new packages. I like new that don't meet the updates policy. So that means that sometimes the new package from a backport could potentially maybe cause some type of conflict. So that's always good to keep in your head. And then they got a little note here just kind of reminding you that if you enable online repositories during install, some media sources could be installed already. Otherwise, we can configure these online repositories now. If this computer will have access to the internet, you can delete the local entry from the list of repositories. Well, that's good to know too. So then it says you can enable and disable repositories of your choice. Just click on the Edit Software Repos button and select at least the release and the updates pair. So you want to at least keep those if you want to turn things off. So that's good to know. And debug and testing are for special cases. After you've checked and enabled the repositories you need, you can go to the next slide. All right, so let's edit software sources. I'm going to click that button, type in my password. And so let's see what we got. So here we have our core selected here, our core release and core updates. So that's the bare minimum you want to have. But it looks like we already got our non-free updates. And here's our tainted. I'm not seeing backports in there. So I guess if I wanted backports, I could click add maybe. Let's try. And it's asking for permission to contact the mirror list on the Mageia website, and I'm good with that. So let's see what happens. So now it's downloading, I'm assuming some metadata and so forth, kind of generate a list of available repos. And I'm not at all familiar here with this utility, so I'm kind of only guessing what's going to do here. But not seeing backports in the list, and backports is not really an essential thing, but I'd kind of like to know how you get those. And there they are. So they appeared after hitting the add there. So now we have our backports here. So if you also wanted to include those, then you now have the option to just hit enabled. And then you could also choose like the debug and the testing. And these are non-free backports here. So I could also say, yeah, give me testing too. So if you really like living on the edge, you could check that as well. So that kind of takes care of that. And then here, of course, you got core backports, and that's probably actually more appropriate for most cases. I would probably recommend the core backports instead, or at least in addition to, but I would probably go with instead. So yeah, I would go with core backports testing there. I think that's good. And then we also got more backports down here. We got tainted backports, so we could include those as well. Even 32-bit, if you need 32-bit access as well. So a lot of options in there. And we do have 32-bit core backports in there as well. So yeah, I think I kind of got that right. So I'll just hit OK. And so now that includes our backports as well. So now we got them all. Yes. So from there, we could hit the update button up here. And then here it's going to ask if we want to check for system updates and so forth. And I guess I can do that while we're at it. Of course, after all that waiting during the install, I probably already did updates, but it's asking to install to contact the mirrors for the latest packages. So I'm going to hit yes so it can refresh all that. And so this probably shouldn't take too long either. And there they are. asking for my approval and I give you grant. So here's a list of all the stuff. We got GStreamer and Mageia Welcome. There's the pipe wire that was kind of giving us a problem during the install there. So like I was saying earlier during the install, this is something that should resolve itself on this update here. So I'm going to hit update and see if it actually does resolve itself. So let's go with yes. And we'll let it prepare. And now it's kind of looking at the pulse audio stuff here. So let's see if we get an error message. And we didn't. So that's all good. Looks like it updated without any issue at all. So I'm going to just quit out of there. And let's see what MCC is. Mageia Control Center. And we still don't have a background, by the way, or a desktop. So I'm not really quite sure what's up with that. So I think before I go any farther here, I'm just going to kind of do a reboot. Okay, and so far so good. Here's our reboot. Of course, we were going to see this anyway. And I did notice that the resolution there on the boot splash there was like roughly 1600 by 1280. I think that's what we selected during the install. Almost forgot about that. But it did kind of look wider, so that was kind of moderately entertaining. So here we are, we're back to our login screen, and let's see if we get a background and stuff now. So just gonna log in here and see what happens. And hopefully this time we'll get something. The splash screen looked a lot more responsive here, so that's a good sign. We're kind of moving along here better. And there we go. That's better. That's kind of what I wanted to see. So, yeah, dodged another bullet. Glad to see it back. So here we are back at our Mageia. So maybe that update, running the update here, just kind of helped. I'm not sure what happened there with the login, but that's kind of one way you can get out of it. So where did we leave off? MCC. Me Community College. So here we have our Mageia Control Center. And so if we click that, I'm assuming it's going to open up the Control Center. So we might as well take a look at it since we're already in here. So this kind of opens up another window, and here we have our Control Center software management. So when I click on that, then we can see we have our add and remove software here, configure updates, the frequencies, update your system, and media sources for installing and updating. So that's kind of cool. So if we hit install, add and remove software, then it looks like it's opening up maybe our package manager, the Mageia package manager. And so there it is. And pretty nice looking package manager, actually. So here we have our categories here, and it even has it sorted by packages with GUI. So that way it's kind of filtering out anything that might just be command line packages. Otherwise, you could go with all. And then, of course, you can sort it by security updates, bug fixes, general, only stuff from the back ports, which we selected earlier. So that's kind of cool. Very nice. So if we went in here and we just looked at something, there's emulators. If you like playing games, like classic arcade games, down in here you can get some cool emulators, DOSBox, and then you got QE, you got VirtualBox and Wine. So wait a minute, Wine is not an emulator? Why is it under emulators? So anyways, Wine is something that you can run Windows on. Windows software, a lot of Windows software anyway, right in Linux. Then you got file tools and games, geography, all kinds of stuff here. So a lot of variety of categories. That's really cool. Even some Office apps. And I'm assuming there's an Office program installed on here already, probably like Libre. And there we go. And yes, got the LibreOffice suite in there already. Toys, video, so a lot to choose from. I didn't see graphics, so there must be another name for that category. But if you're not sure where to find something, of course, you can always use a find up here. And I think we could find something like, let's jump up here and under graphics, let's see what we have already. Pretty good selection already. We got GIMP and Digicam, a K color chooser. That's pretty handy for me. And then under more, nothing under more right now. But let's say we want to add Inkscape. So I'll just put in Inkscape here. And just do a search. And no results because I didn't spell it right. Let's put a K in there and try again. There we go. Very quick. So that just instantly came back. And here it's showing our version is 1.22. Very nice. 3 MGA 9 looks pretty latest and greatest to me. So if I select that, it kind of gives us a nice description down below here. And this is the official package supported by Mageia. And you can get more details down here if you want to kind of drill down and see more of it. Let's just apply that after I check it. So I'm going to check that box, and it's going to let me know that there's some dependencies that need to be satisfied, and that it's going to install all these dependencies if I'm okay with that. And I am, of course. I want the dependencies on there so it'll work. So I'm going to hit OK there, and then hit apply. And that should get us going. And yes, I think I already did that. I kind of had to do that twice, I think. One to let me know about the dependencies, and then again to actually install it, I think is what happened there. So we'll let that install, and it looks like it's installing pretty quickly as well. And I'm pretty impressed with the speed on the control center here. When I hit search there for that package, it just came up right away. So very good. Let's just jump back over in our menu, go up to graphics, and not seeing it under graphics. It's under more. Okay. So it kind of put it down into a second level here under more. And it looks like it's got a few other items I didn't notice before. Maybe I didn't give it enough time to refresh. But if I hit Inkscape, let's just kind of see how snappy it is. It did come right up, so I like the response here. And then we could just select a template if you want. And I kind of like going with a template because it kind of gets a size all set up for you. And it's looking good. So that opened right up. And I got to say, the whole feel is very snappy here on the desktop. So I'm liking that it's got like this quick feel to it. So that's a nice package manager. I'm liking that. And so also in our control center, we got our hardware categories, and it looks like there's all kinds of options here for tweaking your hardware and so forth. You can browse and configure. You can do 3D desktop effects. That's cool. Set up the graphics server, sound configuration. So if we go on there, you can kind of mess with your sound. Let's see if it's in our system settings right here. So that's accessible right here. And so for those other things, like adjusting sound and some of your video settings and all that, I would recommend doing that just through your normal system settings here, your KDE settings. But if we go to display and monitor, then I can see we do have our settings there for display and so forth. So we're good there. Bluetooth is not really relevant on this machine. Then we got our input devices. I like to turn on the numlock for our keyboard because I use that a lot. And then we'll apply that. And under mouse, you can check here for left-handed mode. And just remember, if you're not left-handed and you check that, you got to use your right-click button to uncheck it because you'll be in left-handed mode. So don't forget that. And so let's back up. And we'll just kind of set the system settings off to the side just for a minute. And then over here, we'll just kind of continue a quick tour of this. We got our network and internet settings here. So kind of has that Windows look to it. A classic, you know. Pretty nice though. It kind of reminds me of the classic Windows in a way, but a little better because we got the side panel. So then we got our authentication settings. So you can pop in here and just change your settings if you want to have a fancier type of authentication. If you're a network admin or something, you could set it up for a Windows domain, Kerberos, LDAP, NIS. So more advanced stuff. Kind of cool that you got access to all that though. That really makes it easier if you're kind of digging in. Then you got managed system services by enabling or disabling. So you can go in here and just at a glance, I'm thinking you see the system services that are running here, and here we go. So that is nice. I like that. That really makes it nice to see everything here graphically. So we got Bluetooth service is stopped, but you can start it. If you have to mess with services, this is great. Liking that. And hitting OK kind of gets you back to where you were, I guess. And then some various admin tools. So we got manage users, and that's probably like where you can go in here and add some users, add some groups, or delete. And so you can do all that right here, or you can edit. So if I wanted to edit my user, I can go in here and change my password and so forth. Here we got our account info. And then other things like password info and groups. You can add yourself to more groups here if you wish to do so. And I'm not seeing the sudo group in here, sudoers. Although we have wheel. So I'm thinking that maybe sudo is probably not enabled or installed by default either. Let's find out. I'll bring up KRunner here and just type in console. Here we got our console. And let's just try hitting sudo, like sudo DNF. Just that. And no sudo commands. Okay, so yeah, sudo is not in there by default. So that's a good thing to know. If you want to use DNF and install something from the terminal, you could simply type in SU for super user and then log in, and that'll give you a root prompt here, as you can see, denoted by the little hashtag or pound sign, depending on how you want to look at it. And let me just enlarge that a bit there. And so our regular user has a $sign here, so it changed to a pound sign to show that we're in the root here. So now if I did an install, like let's say I wanted to do a DNF install, and I can just type in IN for short instead of the whole install. And then let's say maybe we want to install like Blender. Then we can just do that, and then it'll kind of go and install it manually. And it's in the Mageia cauldron. Wow, sounds like something someone's conjuring up. So you can see it's contacting the Mageia 9 repos here. And it looks like it's sorting by the fastest mirror here. And there we go. So is this okay? Yes. And if you're used to running Arch or Debian, typically when you get to a prompt like this, the yes or the Y for yes is the default. But on RPM distros like Fedora and so forth, typically the no is the default. So I want to make sure you physically type the Y in there for yes. We'll just hit that, and it looks like it's grabbing it right away. And that's Blender 3.3.3-1, so it looks pretty up to date. And that's one thing I really like about the RPM distros. You got really up to date stuff. I'm liking that. I'm just one of those weird people that don't like running older software. To me, stability is not that important. Although I find running the new software in stable distros like Mageia, Fedora, and so forth to be very stable. I've never had issues really running newer stuff. At least none that I can remember. Okay, and that's complete. So theoretically, Blender should have installed. So if I go up here under graphics, I'm assuming, and maybe more, and there it is. I don't know why it always puts everything under more. To me, that's a little bit annoying. I'd rather just have it in the graphics sub area, but that's all right, I guess. Of course, it could just be a characteristic of Mageia. I don't know. And there we go. So it looks like that installed very well. Blender's looking good. Wow. One of the best open source apps out there. So that's cool and groovy. And since I'm in the console, I don't think HTOP's on here, but I'm just going to type it anyway. And let's install that as well. So I'm going to do a sudo dnf in HTOP and just kind of put that in there. I forgot. I'm in as a root. No sudo. Just DNF. So we'll go with that. And yes. And there we go. So now if we run HTOP, I do have some apps open. So it's showing us about 1.4, which if we were a dead idle there, that would be kind of high. But considering that we have all this stuff open, I still even have Inkscape open. So that's actually probably a pretty good reading there considering. And there's our system settings. So we do got a few things here running in our system settings and so forth. But considering that we got the welcome screen, control center, the system settings open as well, probably not too bad. I would estimate that that's probably right around 900 at idle, which would still be okay, maybe a little high for Plasma, but it's much lower than something like GNOME, which typically idles at 1.2 all by itself with nothing open. Plasma is a nice, lightweight desktop with a ton of features. I love it. So I'm just going to Control C out of that, back to our console, and just try to continue on without being too confusing. And oh, by the way, before I go any farther, I'm going to jump back over here to my KDE system settings here. And I just want to go over here to Appearance. And this is something I'm going to do for Rocky Rob. Rocky Rob has commented in the past couple of videos that he has a really hard time seeing my cursor. If Rocky's having that problem, probably a lot of people are. And I can imagine that's kind of annoying. So I'm going to click on icons over here, or cursors, I mean. And I'm going to see if I can't find a cursor that's a little more visible, easier to see on the video. So here we got a couple candidates. We got Breeze Light here. We got this contrast, large, so that might work. I'm thinking, then we got white glass. And so I think maybe for the sake of the video, I'm going to try this contrast large and then hit apply down here. And so now we got this kind of bigger arrow here, which looks like it might be a lot easier to see. So let's just give that a try and see how that works. And then I come back over here. And so now I got a bigger stuff here. It looks like overall, I notice so that when I'm off the window, it kind of goes back to the default. But let's kind of go with that and see how that works. And Rocky or anybody else that kind of appreciates the bigger cursor, just leave a comment below and let me know if that helps. And if it does, I'll try to remember to do it more often. So back in here, before I get too many windows open, let's just back out of the control center again. I think I'll just quit out of there, and there we are. So now we're back. And it looks like you can also Oh, here's an open a console as admin. So that's where we're in now, is an admin console. So that's kind of nice. You got a shortcut to that there too. And then import windows and documents. Import Windows documents into your system. So it allows two different migration methods. You can either import all documents and settings by copying them from Windows to your home directory or share them between both operating systems. Now that's cool. I like that. So there's a feature if you're coming over from Windows and you did, I'm assuming like a side-by-side install where you have Windows, a dual boot, Windows and Linux. This will go out and find your Windows document folder and bring them over. How cool is that? So that's another big plus. I like that. That's very cool. Of course, I don't have Windows on here, but that is nice to see. Didn't expect to run into that, actually. Cool. And here you can view and search your system logs. There's another handy thing. Here's showing that you need to install the syslog-daemon. And it's asking if I want to install it. And I guess I'll just hit OK. That must be yes. And then it's going to install this. And this sounds like something really cool too, because sometimes if you're troubleshooting, something's not working out right. A lot of times it's hard to know where the log files are in some apps. And so this is kind of cool. So here it looks like messages are available. So I'm just going to click that. I can't even think of a log file that I'd want to access off the top of my head. But this is something I'd really like to have if I was maybe having trouble with something and needed to find out where the log files were quick. But it showed options for syslog and so forth. Probably something that would work better after a restart, but nice to see it there. Then we have our network settings. So here you can configure your network sharing or Windows shares if you're on a Windows domain. I like that. You can share drives and so forth. So these are like utilities, I think, that probably make it a whole lot easier to get your Samba set up for sharing. And then here you could just click search servers and it'll go and search your network, and you could really configure things. Of course, this isn't attached to a network right now, so I can't really go any further with it, but wow, what great options. I've hooked up a lot of Linux machines on Windows networks before, and this really takes the pain out of setting it up. Wow, really speeds things up. So another cool feature. Just really like to see that. Then we have our managed disk partitions. You can share your partitions, and DVD-ROM, which is virtual in our case. So here we can continue, and this is a very dangerous place to be. So if you don't know how to manage your disk partitions and so forth, you could easily trash all your data right here. So this is not something I would recommend for the average user. However, it's nice that you have this available for those who know what to do with it. Very good. And then we have our security settings. So we got system security, permissions, set up your own firewall, and then we got advanced setup and so forth. So a lot of great firewall and even parental controls. That's kind of interesting. And also you can set up authentication for Mageia tools. So if you don't want certain people in there and you have multiple users on your computer, you could kind of keep them out of it through there. And let's see what parental controls are. That looks kind of interesting too. So we'll let that load up here. So here's our Mageia parental control. So it gives you the option to enable it here, and then you can block all network traffic. Wow, this is really cool. So if you were on here, looks like if you could block all network traffic to keep people off the internet altogether. Also has a obscenity sensibility. Cool. So high, low, normal. That is actually kind of cool. Let's see if that works. So let's go with high. And then here we have our user access. So that's me. And then block programs. So you can even have certain apps blocked in here. That's neat. So if I didn't want my son to be accessing Blender, stay out of my Blender, I could just put this in here and then type in Blender, I guess, you know. So I could go in here, block define apps, and then click add here, and then type the name of it, and then hit add. I guess I could hit this too and just kind of browse for it. Oh, it's already in the user bin. Very cool. So I could actually just select it from here if I wanted to. I'd just go in here and look for Blender. And then I could simply select it. But since I know the name of it, I really didn't have to go scrolling through here. But there's Blender right here. And we could actually make that window bigger so we can be sure that we have it. So here we got user bin Blender. So it put in the path. That's probably what we need anyway. So I could add that in. And so now we have unblock users. So blocked users, it's showing Toadwick. So that's pretty clear. Let's see if that works. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to try to access Blender. So let's go to graphics and more and hit Blender. And it let me in. Well, it didn't block. Or maybe I have to hit OK. The following packages need to be installed. Squid and eGuardian. Ah, okay. So, cool. Let's just hit OK and let it do its thing. And now we're back to our original screen. So now let's go back and try it again. So let's go up here, go under graphics, more, Blender. And right here, launching Blender failed. The program Blender was found at user Blender, but it's missing executable permissions. Cool. So, wow. Yeah, so if you had to keep people out of stuff, that is cool. So that would actually be good in a work environment too. Like if you had some kind of maintenance apps that you had on a user's computer that you needed access to but didn't want to give the user access to it, then very handy. So this is really a nice setup. And block all network traffic. I'm assuming if I hit that and hit OK, that would kind of stop me from getting on the internet, I guess. So let's just jump in here and see if that is the case. And it's getting there, so maybe that's not it. So let's do Google and see if that resolves, because that homepage could be something that's cached. And so far, it doesn't seem to be resolving it. So I'm thinking that's probably is blocking the internet altogether. So you could actually lock a user out of the internet, maybe if you had a computer that was set up for a specific task, maybe in a workplace, and it was important that you didn't have internet access for specific users. That is good to know. So now if we uncheck that and hit OK, then I'm assuming Google's going to resolve. And there it is. Cool. And so the third and final test, which I don't quite get yet, but it looks like that the user is sitting in the right spot here for blocking things. And so the allowed users over here probably will exempt certain users. So if we had block all network traffic and then we had a whole bunch of users here, I could select certain users that have access to everything. And then we have this obscenity sensibility, and it's got like high, normal, low. I'm assuming that'll block out, you know, like spicy websites. So theoretically, if that's on high and you hit OK, and then you go out to some website that maybe you shouldn't be at. So let's do like playboy.com. Let's see if we get blocked. And it's taking its good old time. So I think it's blocking it. How cool is that? Wow. So if you have kids at home and you want to set them up with a Linux box, this could be the way to go. I'm not seeing any message, but it doesn't resolve. So I think that's what we're looking for. And I don't know if that went away on its own or not. So let's just try that again. And just make sure it didn't resolve. And so far, so good. All right. Cool and groovy. So those are the parental controls, and they actually work. I'm impressed. I've never actually seen that on a distro before, all installed and set up. So that is very, very cool. And then here we got our time control, so you can have screen time as well. So only allow connections between certain times of the day. So if you hit that, then you can put in your start time and your end time. And so it's in 24-hour format. So we're at like 1800 to 2100 hours. You should be doing your homework and not online playing games. So that is cool. Beautiful. So I am liking that. And so if I went to like Google, I should be able to get to Google still, right? And it does. So yes. And if I put in like Siamese cats. There we go. We're good. So how cool is that? Very nice. So that is a tour of parental controls. And then we have our boot settings. So we got auto login to automatically log in. So if you want to auto log in instead of typing every time, you can do that here. Set up your display manager or set up a boot system. So again, probably more for advanced users. I really wouldn't change anything here because you could really mess up your boot. And those were the options that were at boot up, at install. Remember when we went into the advanced settings. But if I would have had checker's remorse and decided, oh man, if only I wouldn't have checked that SMP. This is how you can undo your transgression. Right here, enable SMP, so you could uncheck that if you wanted to. So that's kind of where that's all stored. That's cool. And then your display manager here, it's showing SDDM by default, which is your default Plasma display manager. That's kind of what you see when you log in. You got your login screen and your background and all that. And then you could change it to XDM if you wanted to, X display manager. So that's an alternative if you feel a little brave. Excellent. So I'm going to close that window. And so that covers the Mageia Control Center. And I got to tell you, I'm really impressed with that, especially the parental controls. I can see where that would really be a great thing to have, especially if you're setting up Linux machines. Maybe you're working in a school environment. You could be like an IT director and in a school environment where you're setting up Linux machines in a computer lab. And if for some nutty reason you don't have content filtering in your school, which you definitely should, but if you don't, you can turn on that content filtering there and kind of filter things out a bit for the internet. But it's ideal for a home situation, I think. So if you have kids set up on Linux, that's a good thing to have in the background. And of course, you can add that parental controls to your list of forbidden software as well, so they can't get on there. You know, if you have a little smarty pants, they can't get on there and open up the parental control center and turn it off because they won't be able to get in it. Just don't leave yourself out of it. So there we go. And then of course our software installer, we were already there. Then we have a thing for our configuration. So it's kind of letting us know, congrats, Mageia 9 using the 6.18 desktop, the kernel. Wow. So that's really up to date there, 618. And then 64-bit KDE Plasma even shows our user ID, the name of our network cards. Very cool. Loving it. And then we have about here, showing some developers here of the about app, I think, and then more info. So here we got all kinds of links to different things like our documentation, release notes, and newcomers, how to do some basic things, documentation. So very handy stuff. And of course, our support forums, wiki, chat room, bug tracker, and community buttons over here. Lots of links that you have, and also donations, which is really important to support the project. This is really a worthwhile project. I think Mageia probably doesn't get enough attention. This is really a fantastic distro, so I am really liking this. And then, of course, back here in our KDE settings, these are all kind of your normal things. If you like a dark setting, you can go to Breeze Dark here and just apply that. And then you'll be in the dark mode, and it even set our wallpaper dark. So I am liking that. And then, of course, you can tweak your styles, your control buttons, and your plasma style, and so forth here. So if you wanted to drill down and even just kind of give yourself a different accent other than blue, you could change it over here by just clicking that. Or you could go from your wallpaper. Of course, the wallpaper is a little dark, but it actually pulled some green there, so that's impressive. But changing your accents here, easy peasy. And I did kind of like that green, so maybe I'll go with that. So again, these are all kind of the standard stuff. If you want to give yourself a user icon, this is where I would actually go to do that. And then you can just click on the little icon here, and you can put your own picture in there or choose a default. And so maybe for a default, I'll go with an astronaut, because we've explored some stuff where I've never gone before. So impressive. Mageia is really impressing me here. And then we got our input devices, which we were already in, and so forth. So that is our KDE Control Center. And just real quick, let's see what we got in default here. We got our Firefox browser installed by default. That's cool and groovy. And I forgot to look what version of Firefox that is. Is that a full version, or is it like, is that a repo version, or like ESR or Flatpak? Actually, I don't think Flatpak is installed, or Snaps by default. But if we go to About here, this is our ESR version, our extended support release. So very nice. 102.7 is our version here for our ESR extended release Firefox. And then, of course, our Office apps we were looking at earlier there, LibreOffice. We got the Writer, Calc, Impress, and Draw, all the equivalents to the Microsoft Office apps. And then we got Digicam, which is a really great browser, and it can also browse HEIC files from your iPhone, which is really great. And then sound and video, we got Clementine for our audio player, Elsa, Dragon player, and VLC media players installed by default, which is great. That means you get all the codecs. And VLC happens to be one of my favorite players anyway. And then we have KCalc and Spectacle, which is our screenshot utility. All the usual stuff there. Got some science apps. We got Geosciences, KDE Marble, and LibreOffice Math. I'm not really familiar with what Marble is, because I've never really looked at Geosciences, but apps. But there is Marble, and it looks like a virtual globe. So that is virtually cool. Or really cool. So here we could kind of zoom in on the globe here. And what happens if we zoom in on it? I always liked globes. I had a globe when I was a kid. And I'm probably not even beginning to touch on what you can do because I'm not at all familiar. But here he's got a little legend up here, so we could instantly fly over here to double click on Australia. And here we are in Australia, and that's Melbourne right now. And as we speak, it's summertime in Melbourne, Australia. So there you are. So we can see our virtual globe up close. And so you can get an up close look at Florida. You can even see the elevations here in Florida where you have the little higher elevations here and the lower. And so that is really nice too, to see that. Rivers and so forth. So that's our virtual globe. And then of course you can zoom out and just kind of spin it with your mouse if you want to do that. So that's always fun. I'm liking it. And it looks like you can just do a direct search. So if you wanted to know where Beijing was, I'm assuming you could just go in here, type in Beijing, and press enter, and it takes you right over there. So really impressive. And there's Beijing, and it even has a hyperlink. So if you click on that, it's bringing up a national capital to let us know that is the capital of China. And nothing else in the description, but gives you the longitude and the elevation and so forth. 49 meters above sea level. And then other options here, even Beijing Station in the Dongsheng district. Wow, Guangzhou City. That is very cool. Xihua. Xiaotou. Wow, very cool. So yeah, I was looking to see if they even had the Haidian district. That's where Mrs. Boss is from. That's cool. And then it looks like you can even get different views here, like the satellite view, info from OpenStreetMap. Wow, very impressive. So really wasn't expecting that. This actual virtual map is way more than just a virtual map, I can see. So we can go from our classic topographic map to an open street to satellite view. And so this would be our open street map here. Very cool. And then this kind of zooms out all the way out. Nice. So yes, you could experiment with this and find out all kinds of neat stuff, temperature maps and who knows what else. I'm rambling, so I got to get back. But I like seeing new stuff like that. And by new, I just mean stuff that you don't normally find on every distro. Very cool. And then we got a live installer manual, our MCC manual. And finally, I guess, before I jump out of here, let's just kind of configure our desktop and wallpaper. So if we come in here, let's see what they got by default. So here's our default Mageia wallpaper. And then K, which is what we have right now. So not a whole lot of wallpaper, but it is kind of nice looking, the default there. If I hit this 1900, it instantly applies, which is really nice. And I just noticed that the taskbar down here is semi-transparent. So that's kind of cool as well. And you can see that our icons are horizontally orientated, which is nice. That's kind of the modern thing. If you like the traditional vertical orientation, change that under icons. And here you see arrangement left to right, but if you click on that, you can go top to bottom and hit apply, and then these icons will go up and down. And that's the traditional way, having your columns and then going across this way. The more modern way is to have them go left to right, and they'll go across the top of your screen instead of the other way around. So that's where you can kind of tweak that. You can also lock your icons in place. If you have that locked in place, they're less likely to get messed around. Like if you have a whole bunch of icons on your desktop for some reason and they got to be in a specific order, then if you hit lock in place, then nobody's going to be able to slide them around and get them out of order. Or sometimes if you do a reboot after an update, icons sometimes in rare cases can just kind of reset and go off into alphabetical order or something, and then you're all screwed up. So lock in place will probably help reduce the possibility of that happening as well. Very good. And then we got our mouse actions and so forth. So yes, our backgrounds. And I kind of like that background actually. But you can also bring in other images. So if you had images on your computer, you could go here and add images, and you could select a folder like your picture folder, and then you would select an image from the folder and hit open, and then that would bring them in. But what if you wanted to bring in a bunch of images? Well, for some reason in KDE, it doesn't just bring in the whole folder. You can only select an image at a time, which I always thought was kind of nutty, especially because in every other desktop, you can just select the whole folder. However, there is a workaround. You can actually go into Dolphin, and if we had like a gazillion pictures in here, I could just highlight those gazillion pictures and then just grab it with my mouse and drag them right into this window here, and then it would put all those gazillion pictures right in there. Or you could just select 3 or 4. So that's kind of a way around that anyway. So I just thought I'd throw that in there for my 2 cents. And then of course we got our Dolphin file manager, since I got that open. And Dolphin is really a great file manager. One of my favorites. Maybe next to Thunar. I still like Thunar a little better. I don't know why. A lot of people would consider Dolphin as probably even better, but I really like Thunar. That's found in the XFCE. And then you could also go down here and change your launcher here. So if you didn't want this look, this is a nice look for kind of a Windows 7 kind of look. But if you want to change that, you actually can do that by right-clicking on your icon, selecting Show Alternatives, and then you can select a different style, like maybe an application launcher style. And if you hit Switch, then when you go down here, you got this launcher style. So this kind of looks a little bit like a whisker menu in XFCE, and I think it puts everything in alphabetical order. If you go up here to all applications, you got them sorted A, B, C, and so forth. And of course, you can always search right here for a specific app as well. And if you like the full screen look, you can go to Show Alternatives and then select Application Dashboard. And so if you hit Switch and then click on it now, then you got like this full screen thing. And so then you can see all your categories over here, hovering over them, changes them. And you can see all the different stuff on a full screen. And of course, you still have your access to log out and shut down, restart, so forth here. And just start typing inside the window if you need to find something, and it'll come right up. And you also got a tab here for widgets. So these are the things that you can drag onto your desktop or down into your taskbar and use. So like a different type of clock, activity bar, and so forth, or Show Desktop. I don't think Show Desktop is in there, so if you wanted like that in there, I could just start typing Show Desktop. Or maybe it's not called Show Desktop. Desktop? Peek at Desktop. That'll work. So we can hit that, bring it down here, and I put it on my desktop. Whoops. I actually just wanted to drag that. So I'm going to just select Enter Edit Mode. And then that'll let me grab it like this. And I believe I can just drag it right in here. And then I just gotta kind of move it too, I think. Because that's not a bad spot, but I'd also like to move it. So I'm gonna enter edit mode. And now I can just grab this and just slide it right down to the end. And slide it a little more. It's not gonna let me put it past that. Oh, that's my edit symbol, so that'll go away anyway. So now if I go up here and just X out of this edit mode, then you can see that my show desktop is right here. So now I got it there, click it again, and everything comes back. So if you like having your show desktop, like if you're a Windows user and you came over to Linux, you like having a show desktop over there on the edge, then now you got one. Excellent. So with that, I think I pretty much covered everything I want to cover today with Mageia. And so here's my 2 cents. I really like Mageia. This is really great. And this is a alpha version of 9, which is not even released yet. And it seems to me remarkably stable. I mean, the only real hiccup that I noticed was right after the initial install, it was black in the background, and that was nothing that a reboot couldn't have solved. So I'm liking that. And the fact that it has all these great utilities, wow. It just kind of went above and beyond my expectations to see all these utilities on here. Setting up Samba, if you're an IT guy, setting up networks and all these utilities are a huge time saver. Really love the fact that they got these graphical utilities that you can use to make life easier. That's a huge reason to use Mageia all by itself. I wouldn't even have to go any further than that as an IT guy or gal, depending on what you are, or somewhere in between. So anyway, like I was saying, Mageia has really impressed me. And then you got like the parental controls, something I never expected to see on here. If you're in an environment where you need to try to keep people out of trouble, maybe you're in a work environment and you want to keep them from getting fired, you could put those parental controls on there so they didn't go somewhere they shouldn't be when then the boss walks in on them and says, "What?" So, yes, big plus for that. And I can even think of, there was a time when I was consulting with the county here locally, and they had an application in their jail that had to have applications on it, but it needed to be hooked up to the internet, but it specifically had to be set up so users could not access the internet. And this was a Windows machine, by the way. So it was a bit of a trick to kind of make that happen because, of course, Internet Explorer is kind of integrated in there. And so it wasn't a huge trick, but it was a little bit of a trick. And so if that was a Linux machine, that would have been a piece of cake. Just put Mageia on here, put in that parental control, turn off all network access, and you're good to go. So anyways, that's kind of an example, a rough example. Don't know if it would have applied to that environment, I don't know. But it made me think of that. All these things that aren't normally installed on your average distro. To me, that's one of the biggest things that stands out with the Mageia is all these great utilities and so forth that you have access to. And so I like having all this stuff on here. It's like, it's got a lot of stuff installed, but it's like stuff that's practical. It's not one of those things where you go, oh, look at all that junk. Now I got to clean it all off before I even use it. To me, this is something way more practical. And so I love the stuff that's on here. And even that map virtual globe, that was really cool. Again, something that if you have family members, students, kids in your household, those are kind of useful things. Wow. So that is great. So would I use Mageia? Heck yeah, I would. I would even use this alpha. I could put that on a machine and I think I'd be happy with it. Very much so. And I'm thinking that 9 should be out this year. I don't have an exact date here when that'll be out. I'm not even sure if there is a target date yet. However, if there is, or if somebody wants to chime in and let me know, I will definitely pin that up there and make that available. And with that, I'm giving this Mageia a double thumbs up. This is an excellent distro. I think Mageia is underrated, if nothing else, or it's not talked about enough, because this is really a wonderful distro, and I don't see a whole lot out there as far as reviews. I'm not really quite getting why there's not more buzz about Mageia, because this is really a fantastic distro. In my opinion, I think this is really wonderful. So again, double thumbs up. And hopefully this was helpful. And if it was, don't forget to leave that thumbs up and hit subscribe. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.